Okay, so now we are going to do a video on reincarnation or rebirth. So I'm skipping the in-depth talk on the sexual misconduct, and I will do one, but I really want to give it justice. So, and keep in mind that I'm doing these videos from my heart, and so I don't want to do any extra preparation for the videos. I want to do it off the top of my head, partly to make the video shorter, and just do my thoughts on these topics as I currently remember them, so it's really important to remember that, because if I were writing a book or something like that, I would go and pull up specific names and research and things like that to be as precise as possible. If somebody wrote a book and I want to mention them, I don't remember the author's name or something like that, and that's going to happen particularly with the reincarnation topic. It's just important to remember that I'm just doing this from my heart and off the top of my head for the sake of short videos and just getting my thoughts out there. And so because these topics, I feel like if I read from a paper or something like that, it's not going to come about as authentic as it will if I am simply just speaking from my heart. And really, this is about my journey to Buddhism and the way I see it, not a precise study on these aspects. So we're going from my memory, we're going from my heart, we're not going from some precise study. And so the reincarnation topic, I know that Buddhists makes a distinction between their concepts by using the word rebirth instead of reincarnation. I'm just going to use the blanket term reincarnation, but know that there is a distinction in Buddhism because of the no-self concept. So the other reincarnation concepts will have something that is like the soul that has a certain distinct personality, certain distinct characteristics that just reincarnates from lifetime to lifetime into a different body, so different body, but basically the same person. In Buddhism, that is not the case. You can have a completely different personality. There are certain things that maybe from lifetime to lifetime are longer lasting, we'll call them, that they don't change as easily, but they do eventually change depending upon what traumas you've experienced in one lifetime and how ingrained it is into your, what we'll call the subtle self. So what I wanted to discuss as far as reincarnation on this video is, because I already spoke briefly about reincarnation before, is the aspect of the studies and things that go into reincarnation. I did do extensive studies. I just don't remember all the names of all the books and the researchers involved. But I do recall some of the details of those research materials that were done. And that's what I'm going to discuss now. The thing about some of these studies was that they would look at a particular person. I don't remember his name offhand. Did some research on children who claimed to remember a past life. And so one of the things you have to take into account as far as remembering a past life is when your body goes into, one of the things that goes into the ground, and Buddhism kind of understands this, I think, and it makes sense within the Buddhist philosophy, is the body goes into the ground and decomposes, right? So that includes the neurons. And most of your memories are kept within your neurons somehow. So in your brain, your memories are in your brain. And we know this because in scientific circles, you know that when they do, they look at people who have severe head trauma or things like that, they may forget and be incapable of recalling certain memories. Also, things like dementia or Alzheimer's, a neurological disease of some sort, can inhibit your ability to recall your memories. So one of the questions that some people may have is like, well, if we all have a past life, if we were all reincarnated, how is it that we don't remember? Well, that's why, because your memories are primarily in your neurons, so you're not going to remember one life to the next. However, because certain things, and we'll call it the subtle self rather than the soul, certain things about your journey as you have progressed in life from one life to the next, they get embedded somehow within your subtle self. They things that have impacted you and things like of that nature. And when you go from one life to the next, sometimes your neurons are able to draw on that subtle self energy, particularly in young children who haven't formed too many memories in this life. As we get older and we form our own memories that we draw on that are in the brain, we lose the ability to draw on those memories that are in the subtle self, or the impressions, we'll call them, not really true memories, but the impressions. So the memories that somebody has from a previous life, if they do have some sort of recollection or drawing on those memories, they're always going to be filtered through our neurological system that we currently have. And because they're filtered through the memories that we have now, they're modified somehow, because you're using your current brain and your current knowledge to interpret those. So they did these studies on young children who claimed to remember past lives. And so, a child could just say, well, I was, a fireman in my past life, or I was a police officer, or I was a dancer, and they could just be, being children, just playing games, and it could be totally untrue. So, sit there and say, well, my name was Sherry in my past life. My name was Johanna in my past life. And that could just be them playing games. So you wonder, which one of these children, is there something to some of these children? And so they did a study on children claiming to believe that they could remember past lives. And as particularly children who were listened to, because children, if the parents just they're like, okay, no, it's like you're just saying stuff and ignoring them, there'd be no way to study those children. So the children that were listened to by their parents, and given some level of credence, and they call this researcher over, and they listen to them and write their stories down. They compared their stories of past life events to real places and real people that really existed. And this researcher was able to find in certain children, there was a certain percentage that they found out were exactly what you would expect, hogwash. And I don't know what the percentage were, but probably the larger percent was there's no way to expound on this. Like, it could be just the child making stuff up. But there was maybe a smaller percentage of, maybe even a significantly smaller percentage, I don't remember what the percentage was, of children who claimed to remember a past life where there was, it was so accurate, it was scary. because not only did the person with the exact name, the family members, and then with the exact names, the place was precisely as they told, and this was done back in the 70s. They didn't have internet where they could just look up. I mean, you're talking about 3 or 4 year old children, so even now, or even 6 or 7 year old children, even now, children that young wouldn't necessarily know how to look this stuff up on the internet that well, but back then the internet didn't exist. So when they were doing these studies in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, I'm not sure if it continued into the 80s, but right around that time frame, the internet didn't exist. They couldn't just look these places up on Google Map and find out they looked exactly like they said. And these were places these children had never been to. They couldn't have possibly known the details that they knew. And so there were a certain number of children who gave very accurate details of information from not just the past life, but places where that person really lived. And they were able to find the relatives of the person who had deceased. And so those studies were some of the things that really helped convince me that there is something to this past life stuff. There were further studies done by somebody else. I don't remember his name offhand. Like I said, I'm going from memory. Where it was done through meditation. I call it meditation. It's called hypnosis, but it's not hypnosis like you are getting sleepy. It's not that type of or it's more like a meditation. It's the same way that Buddhist monks will access memories to past lives through meditation, but it's just called hypnosis when somebody else guides you through that process. So there is, they would bring into a deep state of hypnosis, a state of calmness for the patient. It's called I believe it's hypnosis therapy, or it's either I think it's hypnosis therapy, where they and it's the same methods used by psychiatrists that would give hypnosis to remember very early events that due to trauma had been forgotten by the patient. So they when they would use hypnosis to find out, for example, who molested a child, the child couldn't remember the details because of the trauma, and so they would bring the child or adult, maybe when whatever point in their life they decided to get help, into hypnosis to remember those childhood traumas and to remember what happened to deal with them. And so the memories were able to be retrieved. And they would bring these, and the way they discovered this was they would bring people back all the way back to moments just after they were born, and to be able to see that they could re-experience the memories of what happened in the operating, or not the operating room, but the where birth is given, right? So there's a different name for it. But yeah, so when they were just hours old, they could recall events and know that those events actually happened as they described. So this was a developing science that they were aware of, that they could go. And one of the psychiatrists who did this type of therapy for people could not find the early childhood trauma in this lifetime that caused the pains that the person was experiencing. So he decided to see, on a whim, I'm not sure, or just test it out, see if he could go further back than birth, and ended up going into a past life. And that was how it was actually discovered. And so details from these studies have proven to be ambiguous, because sometimes people have said, well, because now you're hypnotizing people with knowledge who could have studied things and remembered things in their subconscious that they don't consciously remember, that they're pulling up things. now that they have, maybe somebody's mentioned in passing, and then some of these things, maybe some of the dates are more in line with something that could have been studied but not accurate. Maybe a misprint. The person was saying using a misprint date rather than the actual date that we know it actually happened. And so those types of things that that can happen. It's not 100% verified in the sense that what I would consider more verified was the memories of the children. What I would say to that is that some of these cases very well may be legit, but like I said, because it's the neurons that keeps the memories and it's being filtered through our current neurons, the older we get, when you go back in through hypnosis to retrieve those memories, the filter is going to maybe screw up some of these memories and make them imperfect. And that's my personal interpretation. It's not a scientific one in the sense that it cannot be proven. What we do know is that these studies were done, and particularly the one done with hypnosis has imperfections from a scientific standpoint that cannot be verified. The one done for children is not a repeatable experiment, so science is particularly something that can be repeated. You can do this study and do this experiment, and then everybody in every other lab can repeat it. Well, this is because it's more historical and just talking to young children who claim to have these past life memories and talking to witnesses, even though it is very strong evidence and stronger evidence, in fact, than the hypnosis one, that has a more repeatable aspect to it. It cannot be classified as scientific because of its inability to be repeated by different people in different labs, and you're relying on witnesses. So I felt comfortable with believing it and trusting it. As far as these studies went, you may not be particularly willing to do that, depending upon your scientific knowledge and your how much you prefer the scientific method over other forms of knowledge. But those studies are out there, and I do believe personally that there is something to that, and that has helped me gain confidence in the reincarnation theory. But I do believe in the Buddhist version of it, because I don't see it as something where me as I am in this life will continue to just inhabit different bodies and be me again. So this body's going to decompose, and then I will be reborn in a different form, and my personality will be more in line with my neurological pathways, and so there will be greater differences than one would expect. And from lifetime to lifetime, one can only hope that they get better and better and get closer to nirvana. And I'm hoping that I can achieve it in this lifetime, but I know that I'm not there yet. And that's all I'm going to do for this video.